Okay, it's Sunday, and against my better judgment, it's time to go to Reddit and see what we can find in this hive of scum and villainy. So I've been to the Overwatch University subreddit and just scraped all the questions off the first couple pages. We're going to answer the questions now with special guest, my actual human son, for probably about 3 entire minutes before he gets bored and leaves, as is tradition. So first question is, are some heroes actually bad for climbing? And we will get the obvious statement out at the beginning. Yes, it's possible to climb on any hero. People have gone from bronze to grandmasters playing just Mercy. You can climb on any hero. But some heroes do end up being harder to climb on than others. Generally the ones that have less control over the game themselves, or less ways to interact with the games themselves, I should say. Or heroes that are dependent on teamwork to actually be effective. So, prime example, Mercy is very hard to climb on, because Mercy has less ways to interact with the game compared to the other supports, and Mercy is by far the most dependent on her teammates in the entire game. So Mercy ends up being pretty bad to climb in low SRs at least. It gets easier as you climb and you can depend on your teammates more, but Mercy still ends up being pretty difficult to climb on compared to other heroes. So, Mercy's one. Bastion ends up being hard to climb on because Bastion needs his team to play around him, so you require some amount of teamwork, which will be hard to come by, especially in lower SRs where teamwork is hard to come by in general. Pharah ends up being harder to climb on after a point, because very low SRs, people are quite bad at dealing with Pharah. Assuming you're playing Pharah well, people are bad at dealing with Pharah. But then after you reach a point, well, now the enemy team are playing hit-scan heroes, and they actually know how to play those heroes. Makes it rather difficult. It's not like there's nothing you can do about it. You're not hard countered by hit-scan heroes. You can still do stuff about it, but it ends up being difficult. Especially if you're learning to play Pharah. So, you know, yes, there are some heroes that are bad for climbing, but just in the way that they're harder than the other heroes are to climb on. People will tell you that, like, tanks are harder to climb on. They're lying, but they'll tell you tanks are harder to climb on. It ends up pretty much, like, there are only a few that are really bad for climbing. It's pretty much like Mercy, Bastion, unless you've got people that are going to play around you. Sombra ends up being bad unless you're really good at Sombra, because Sombra also has an inherent tilting effect on your teammates where they assume you're bad, and as soon as anything goes wrong, it's your fault, regardless of if it is or not, you know? So there are heroes like that as well. If you're playing Widowmaker, anything starts going bad, it's your fault. Automatically, doesn't matter if it is or not, it's your fault. So you end up tilting your teammates unless you are literally God's gift to man. And even then, they'll probably still blame you for losing, even if you win. Such is life. So the answer is yes, some heroes are bad for climbing, but they're just harder. You can still climb on any hero. It's just, sometimes it's going to be a little bit harder. So, next up, I want to actually write down, like, you know, do future me a solid here, and, like, try and make it easier, but I forgot to put the timer somewhere I could see it. Okay, 6:45. Great. So, next up is, how do you find out what characters are strong in this current meta? And this person was basically saying, like, dude, I played this game a lot. I played like 30 hours since the season started or something. I still don't understand what the metagame is, dude. How do you figure out who's good and who's bad? And, like, the real answer, dude, is it just kind of doesn't matter much, because it doesn't matter in low SR, and it still doesn't matter in high SR. It matters a little bit more, but, like, more than meta, it's just, like, team comp matters. The meta doesn't matter exactly, because meta right now is GOATs, right? But the ladder is like just Orisa Roadhog pretty much right now, right? That's kind of it. So the thing is with the metagame is it only ever matters really to the highest high-level players, that's where it actually matters. Because those are the people that are going to use their heroes effectively, they're going to use all their abilities properly, and they're going to leverage what the hero's strong about, and that's where metagame really matters. If you are not, like, in the top 5%, maybe even higher than that, you don't need to worry what the metagame is. It really doesn't matter that much. So, the way to find out what the meta is pretty much watch, like, high-level streamers and see what they're doing. That's what the meta is, but that doesn't affect you, it doesn't affect me, like, it doesn't affect any of us below, like, that level, so it's really not worth worrying about. The thing that matters, I didn't put that on the screen, by the way, I'm not making fun of this person, just so everybody's aware. The thing that matters for us, right, is just that your team comp isn't awful. But even that doesn't matter as much as people think it does. I've seen bad team comps beat good team comps all the time. You want to know how many times I've seen, like, quadruple, quintuple DPS and just a Zenyatta as a healer win? I've seen that win way more times than people who should tell you it would win. Because if you go to, like, the Reddit, right, they'll tell you, oh no, there's no way, man, the 5 DPS team is terrible. It's just play fucking goats, bro. I've seen the 5 DPS team win a depressing number of games. It really doesn't matter that much. So the short answer is, you find out by watching high-level players, really, but, like, don't fucking worry about it, dude. It doesn't matter to you or me. So, next up is, how many heroes should you focus on getting good at? So I've always been of the opinion that you are better off focusing on a few heroes rather than a lot of heroes, because I've always been of the mindset that it's better to be really good at a specific couple of things than to be average at a lot of things. So I would recommend focusing on one hero at a time to get good at, because the more, like, basically, the more you try to learn at once, the slower it's going to take you to learn all of those heroes. Like, you'll learn them all theoretically at a very even pace, but it will be slower than if you just focused on one at a time. Especially if you, like, really want to really get good at that hero. Like, you need to actually invest a lot of time in playing that hero to get, like, really good at them. So, one is, like, the most, if you really want to, like, really get good at them, one, pick them and get good at them. But, like, realistically, you could probably do, like, 2 or 3, and it wouldn't be that slow to learn how to play those heroes. Provided they aren't from, like, massively disparate, vocations is the only word that comes to mind right there. Like, if you're trying to learn how to play Widowmaker, Reinhardt, Lucio, right? Like, those 3 heroes, there is essentially 0 overlap between those heroes. So you are just, like, there's no crossover. They are all doing something widely different. So it's going to take longer. It's going to take longer to do, like, those 3. Whereas if you're doing, like, Ana, Soldier, Orisa, then, you know, those heroes have, like, more overlap between, like, positioning and all that, and, like, the teamwork and all that. They have more overlap with them, so you would find that would be, you would learn how to play those 3 heroes quicker, because there's more overlap between all of them. I've gotten so off topic from, like, my original book. I got off on a tangent, and now I've, like, lost my train of thought. Might be having a stroke, actually. That sounds about right. So anyway, the focus on, like, a couple of heroes at a time. Don't try and learn, like, fucking 5, 6 heroes at the same time. You're gonna learn them at such a fucking glacially slow pace that you might as well have not bothered. And try and pick ones that are, like, relatively similar in what they're trying to do, their general game plan. And that doesn't necessarily mean, like, Ana and Widowmaker. Those 2 heroes, despite being snipers, right, there's, like, actually quite little in terms of overlap between them, because they don't even position the same, they don't aim the same. Ana's all about cooldown management. Widow has almost no cooldowns to manage, like, so even though they're, like, the 2 snipers, there's actually not much overlap between them, so you wouldn't get much carryover in terms of skills. So focus on just a couple at a time, and ideally they are similar in what they're trying to do, so that it's a little bit faster. Go, like, 2, 3. But if you want to really get wood, just pick one. So, moving on. How to deal with a feeding Hammond on your team. Actually, I've skipped a question. Oh god, now everything's fucked up in my... Oh god, this is the one. God, okay. How to deal with a feeding Hammond on your team. So, the answer how to deal with this is the answer with largely any tank on your team that's feeding, which is, if they're feeding, they're distracting the enemy team. So you try and take the advantage you can off of that. Because even if they're hardcore feeding, right? Like, Hammond is feeding his fucking little heart out. Well, he's still eating cooldowns, he's still taking attention away from the enemy team, they might still be ulting him, right? Like, he is still basically achieving what a tank is meant to be doing, it's just he's also probably dying at the same time, which is the suboptimal part of it. But he is still distracting them, he is still taking their attention, he's still eating cooldowns, so you try and use that to as much of the advantage as you can. And, like, here's the thing also, with, like, Hammond specifically, is that it can look like Hammond is feeding, but he isn't necessarily. Like, part of it is also, like, determine if the guy is actually feeding or not. Because if the guy is, like, diving into the enemy team and eating a bunch of cooldowns, taking a lot of damage, but then coming back to you and, like, not dying, he is actually just kind of playing Hammond. Like, if he dies, that's where he fucked up. But, like, if he went in, absorbed a bunch of damage and cooldowns, and then survived, he played Hammond. Like, that's the entire goal of playing the hero. And if it seems like he's feeding, it might be that the team doesn't know how to play with a Hammond on their team and is not actually taking advantage of the space being created. The same thing can happen with, like, a Winston. Winston is dramatically easier to play, but, like, it can still look like he's feeding if, like, he's like, my team here, alright, I go in, and then, I've been this guy enough times in the past, I go in, I look around, everybody's here, great, we're gonna go in now. I jump in, I start playing Winston, and I look back, and my teammates are being held hostage by, like, a soldier. I'm fighting 4 people, guys, you couldn't get past this one guy, like, alright, I jumped in, 5 people back here, held hostage by, like, a Zarya. Like, that can happen pretty easily, where the enemy, your team is just, like, doesn't follow you in. You can be playing your job perfectly fine as the tank, and it just turns out that your team just doesn't want to follow you. That makes it look like it's your fault, because you're the one that jumped in. You could have done everything right. You jumped in, you did everything you're meant to do. But, like, if your team just doesn't follow you in any way at all, then, like, it looks like you're the one that fucked up, when you could have done nothing wrong, dude. So, if he is actually feeding, and this is true of any tank, he's still distracting the team, still absorbing damage. You try and get as much advantage out of that as you can. Simultaneously, ask yourself if the guy is actually fucking feeding or not, or just nobody's actually, like, following him in and following up on the space that he is creating. So there you go. But he's still playing the tank, he's just also dying. So, take what you can out of it. So, next up is... Sorry, hold on. There we go. Having a meltdown trying to figure out what number I was typing in. Next up is there any reason to stay as Baby D.Va after a fight is done? And the question here is basically like, if you get demeched, is it better to just kill yourself? And the answer is usually yes. But the problem is, you've got to think about a couple things. The flippant answer is like, it depends, right? But here's the reasoning. So, not all maps are convenient to kill yourself on, first off, which is an issue. Like, if you're on Horizon, there is no good place to kill yourself on this map except in space, right? So, it is very hard to just, like, throw yourself off the map and die on this if you lose your mech as D.Va. Which is, like, the best way to get your mech back usually, just kill yourself, but not every map's feasible. If you're on, like, first checkpoint Rialto, or not Rialto, Havana, that's the one I'm thinking of, then it's, like, nowhere to kill yourself, dude, you're just stuck as Baby D.Va. So, if there's a convenient place to throw yourself off the map, it usually ends up being better. But here's the other thing you've got to decide as well. How long is it going to be before the enemy team starts pushing again? Because if you throw yourself off the map, and and the enemy team starts pushing in right after you did that, you lost the fight, because your team's fighting 5v6, right? Whereas if you wait in that situation and just, like, shoot into the fight, you can get your mech back pretty quick, and then that'll usually end up being faster than if you threw yourself off the map if the fight's about to start. Especially on certain maps where the time to get back can be very, very long. So those are the two things that you really think about, is there a convenient place to kill myself, or is it going to take me, like, fucking 8 seconds just to get to a ledge to throw myself off of, in which case, no, that's not going to be that's not going to be better already because of the sheer time it took you to get there. And then you've got to figure out when the next push is going to start. And if the answer is within the next couple seconds, you don't have time to kill yourself. You're just going to have to try and get your mech back quickly during the fight. And those are, like, the two things to consider, really. So, the big one really is, like, time until the next push, but some maps it's also just not feasible to kill yourself on, so, and sometimes you just throw yourself in the enemy team. Like, this is way easier to do if you're on the attacking team, is just throw yourself into the defending team. They'll kill you. And then you get your mech back right there. So the enemy team can be a convenient place to kill yourself depending on it. But if you're the defending team, you do not have that kind of leeway to just, like, throw yourself into the enemy team. Because you've got to, like, go all the way up to the attacking team spawn, right? And then you've just killed yourself on the attacking team and they go, oh, D.Va's dead. Let's push in, right? So you can't do that if you're the defending team. But if you're the attacking team, you can use the other team as a convenient place to kill yourself as well. But those are the two things to consider in regards to that. So next up is, how do you recognize your own mistakes? And the thread was kind of funny about it, because it was like, the guy was basically like, I'm really good at recognizing mistakes from other people, and I'm pretty toxic. It's led to me being pretty toxic. But I can't recognize my own mistakes, but I'm in the same SR as them, so I must be making the mistakes. True story, you probably are. So, what I found helpful, and I guess I'll do the other thing, what some people find helpful, this is pretty common advice I see, is that people will, like, kind of identify main areas that they struggle with, and then, like, write post-it notes and then, like, stick them around their monitor related to it. So, like, positioning, people struggle with that, so they'll write, like, control high ground and then stick it around their monitor. You know, it's just, like, the general rules around their monitor that they're trying to focus on. And then they'll, as time goes by, they'll write more specific things and put it up there. Though the thing is there, you have to identify the mistake to begin with, I guess. But that's what usually advice I see commonly related to this subject. What I find is helpful for recognizing mistakes is basically to narrate what you're doing to yourself. And you might feel like an idiot doing this, but, like, dude, you're in your own fucking room, like, who gives a shit, right? So if you're, like, narrating what you're doing, and then it's forcing you to, like, think through what you're actually doing to yourself, and it's like the rubber duck principle with coding, or, like, you put a rubber duck in front of you, and you explain your code to the rubber duck, and that helps you, like, think about what you're doing, and you have to, like, actually think about it because you're explaining it to somebody else, right? In this case, a rubber duck. So, like, narrating what you're doing can be helpful. Alright, I'm playing Reinhardt. Alright, so I'm trying to control the choke point now. I'm trying to push my way. I'm gonna, like, push in a little bit, see what I can get away with. Alright, my shield took a lot of damage. I'm not gonna do that. I gotta try and get in a little bit faster than that now. How am I gonna do that? So you just kind of, like, narrate through and, like, think it out loud to yourself. Because just, like, hearing what you're doing out loud and what you're thinking can make it easier to think about. Everything sounds great until you say it out loud, and then suddenly you realize it was fucking stupid, right? So that's what I find helpful, is just, like, narrate to myself what I'm doing, because then you have to really think about it. Similarly, like, along a similar line, like, if you really want to try and get good at a game, then something you can do is teach another player, because that forces you to, like, think about all the things you're doing, because suddenly you have to explain to somebody else why they should be doing something, and then that it forces you to, like, reevaluate things and really think about it, right? So teaching another player how to play the game can help you improve and, like, realize things like that, because it just makes you think about it in a different way. But, personally, that's what I found most helpful. Just, like, talking to myself like a fucking weirdo is, helpful for me. Because, I mean, you have to actually think about it, because it also prevents, like, another thing people struggle with. This is a pretty common thing, is people ask, like, how do I stop myself from going into autopilot, right? And if you're narrating what you're doing to yourself, you have to actively be thinking about what you're doing to narrate it, right? So it kind of stops you going into autopilot at the same time. And you're having to reevaluate what you're doing. Or not even necessarily reevaluate, just like evaluate it to begin with. So that's what I find is helpful for recognizing mistakes. The other thing to do is just, a really basic one is just like, every time you die, just think about how you died for a second, and then think like, alright, so did I die because I made a bad choice, or did I die because I failed mechanically? And if you can identify if it was a bad choice or not, that's helpful, because if you recognize it was a stupid decision, then think to yourself what you should have done in that situation instead, and then the next time you're in a similar situation to that, you'll be more ready for it. So you're less likely to make the same mistake in the future. And if you just recognize that it was a mechanical mistake, well, you know, you can't really do much to expedite improving on that one, but you know you made the right decision at least if you go down, like, did I fuck up? How did I fuck up, right? That's, so just, like, dying, figuring out if it was a mistake or not, is, like, a really basic one. The other thing you can do is watch, the video, record the game, watch it back afterwards, and people always are looking for, like, the mistake, right? But what I find is usually more productive than the mistake you were looking for, when you're watching videos back, is looking for opportunities that you didn't spot at the time. Because when you're playing the game, you're usually focused on something, like, you see people clearly, like, tunnel visioning on what they're doing at the time. When you're watching it back, you are now completely detached from the game, you can take it all in, right? So now, suddenly, you might notice, instead, oh, well, I was, like, focusing on this guy over here, I didn't notice that, like, Anna was off by herself over here, and I could have just gone over here and got her. There was something like this in the Discord the other day. Hold on, let me get a clip about this. Because it sort of highlights what I'm talking about right here. So this person, they had described a situation to me, what should I have done in this situation, because they couldn't figure it out. And I was like, hey, just, like, show me a clip, please, because I can't, like, process it into text form. And so they sent this clip, or posted this clip, and they were like, so let me read the whole thing to you that this said, right? To sort of illustrate what my point here is. I'm reviewing my own VoD, and I'm not completely sure what I should do in this situation. I am a Roadhog, the map is Nepal Sanctum, the point is 15 seconds from being unlocked. 5-6 of the team is on the opposite part of the pit, but Orisa decided to run directly onto the point. The enemy isn't exerting much pressure on the point, just an Orisa and a Genji. What should I do? When this happened to me, I chose to go to the Orisa. The enemy team flanked around, and we weren't able to stop them from cutting off our black line. We capped point, but they flipped it back at 15% or so. And so I watched this, and this was the missed opportunity that I spotted, right? See if you can spot it. We'll play the clip through, and we'll see if you can spot the missed opportunity. Remember, we're the Roadhog in this situation, right? So we're down there by the shield, right next to me. Yep, we go over there. We fight it out. Alright. Getting control of the point. Oh god, here they come around the back of us. And now, team's starting to get killed behind us. Oh dear. Oh, it's all falling apart. So, did you spot... You get how it's going here. Did you spot the missed opportunity? It's actually really early on. If you look at the left-hand side, once it gets a little bit more into it, I'll stop. So, the missed opportunity is present right here. Let me get my pen up, because I didn't get that up. Didn't think I'd need it. Come on. So the missed opportunity is, we're Roadhog right here, and we're like, alright, well, you know, they're sort of pushing in over here a little bit, but you know what I see? I see this Anna all off by herself over here. And do you know what I also notice? Their only healers are Anna and Lucio. So if I'm playing Roadhog, dude, if I go up this staircase just a little bit, stand here, oh fuck. Suddenly this Ana, who is all by herself, is looking pretty fucking juicy, right? Like, she doesn't appear to be looking at me. If I go, and like, I'd bump into this, we don't know Sombra's there, she's invisible, so like, I'd bump into the Sombra on the way over here, and maybe even like disarm this, attempted flank over here, but like, just discounting that, dude, this Ana is all by herself, she is focusing over here on her team. Like, that's a pretty sick opportunity if I'm the Roadhog right here. I haven't even got to go that far to try and capitalize on this opportunity, right? I got to come up here, bam. I'm in range to try and get that Ana. So that's what I'm talking about, is that, like, it's very easy to just, like, look for the mistakes, but it's easier when you're watching things back to notice the opportunities that you didn't spot at the time. And then next time you're in a similar spot, you're more likely to see see the advantage that you didn't take before. So, anyway, that's kind of rambling and tangential point, but there you go. That's like, those are things to think about in terms of, like, finding your own mistakes. And so, oh god, where'd the timer go? Oh, Jesus Christ, what a disaster. Oh god, what a professional operation we run around here. Oh god, man, that's down there. Alright, we got there in the end. Jesus fucking Christ. So, the last question for this week, and do not expect a super in-depth answer for this one. The answer is, I've been playing a lot of Soldier recently, but I have noticed that enemy Widows have been sniping me and outranging me. What should I do to counter this? Don't fight Widow as Soldier. You don't win that matchup unless the Widow is really, really bad. The thing is that Soldier is a long-range hero, but he is not Widowmaker range. Sniper range is one tier above Soldier, so he doesn't really get to fight Widow. This is just a general thing for anybody who is trying to counter the Widow by just fighting the Widow, right? If you have to shoot Widow more than one time to kill her, you already don't have the advantage. Because if you can't one-shot the Widow, well, Widow can one-shot you. So that puts you in an unfortunate situation. Like, if you're playing Ana, Ana's love to try and fight Widowmaker. You have to fight Widow. You have to shoot Widow 3 times as Ana to kill her. And Widow has to shoot you once. And Ana has a pretty easy model to headshot, right? Like, she's stumped forward, head, like, lurching forward, very hunched over model, like, Quasimodo style type model. Ana's pretty easy to headshot, and you've got to hit Widow 2 extra times to kill her. You're not very favored in that one. If you're playing McCree, you are in no way going to be close enough to Widow, unless the Widow is extremely bad. You are never going to be close enough to Widow to not need to shoot her like fucking 6 times to kill her, right? Like, it can't be done, dude. Soldier, you've got Helix rockets, so that's nice, but you've got to shoot the rockets, like, so far to hit the Widowmaker. If she gets hit by them, she's terrible, right? Like, Soldier has to shoot Widow a lot of times. And, like, Widow just has to shoot you once, dude. Ashe does fine. Ashe has only got to shoot the Widow twice. Maybe even once if you're damage boosted or the Widow doesn't have full health. You might get her in one shot. So, like, Ashe isn't bad. Hanzo can one-shot Widow. Like, most Widow players would tell you fighting Hanzo is fucking scary. Because Hanzo can just keep peeking. He's a projectile hero. He can just peek in the corner and fucking spamming at you, and like one of those trees has got to hit sooner or later. He's got Infrasight more easily than you, because he's got Sonic Arrow. He can lunge around the corner to make peeking. It's harder to like get him on the peak. If he can like lunge around the corner or like climb up the corner or anything like that, he can come at you from like unusual heights to make it harder to headshot him. So Hanzo's a scary one to fight as Widow. And like, so, like, here's how you counter this as Soldier, McCree, Ana, any of these people that can't just, like, fight Widow, right? Here's how you counter it. You just don't go in Widowmaker's line of sight, dude. Widowmaker's line of sight is fucking scary, so you try and avoid it as much as you possibly can. Which is usually not that hard, it's just that you're constrained, right? This is the thing with Widow, is that you don't necessarily need to kill people to still be having an impact on the enemy team, because just your line of sight is scary. being in Widow's line of sight, even if the Widowmaker is awful, right? Like, even if the Widowmaker is the worst player in the world, law of large numbers, if she takes enough shots at me, sooner or later she's gonna hit me, and that's gonna kill me, right? Like, being in Widowmaker's line of sight, even if the Widow is bad, you still don't want to be in Widow's line of sight, because the longer you spend in Widow's line of sight, the greater the risk of getting one-shot and killed. So you don't need to kill people as Widow to be effective, because you're restricting their options. They can't, like, stand in places as freely as they would if they could if you weren't there. So this is what you do if you can't, like, fight the Widow. You just avoid going into their line of sight. So if you're playing, like, really easy example, if you're on King's Row, you're defending, first checkpoint, just stay next to the wall on the right-hand side, dude. Like, just stay on the wall next to the hotel on the point. She can't see you unless she, like, comes in really far. Like, if you're standing, like, right up against that wall on the point, she has to jump in past the gate to get line of sight on you, right? Like, that means she is, like, suddenly within spitting distance of you. So now suddenly the range advantage that she had has been drastically reduced, right? It's very dangerous for Widow to do something like that unless her team is exerting an unimaginable amount of pressure. So that's what you do to counter that situation is like Soldier. You just don't go in Widowmaker's line of sight. You wait for somebody that is more equipped for Widowmaker to deal with Widowmaker. Or, if there's nobody else on your team that can deal with the Widowmaker, and, like, she's really giving your team problems, you gotta change to somebody that is more capable of dealing with Widowmaker. Be it Winston, Hammond, Diva, Widow, Hanzo, doesn't matter. If no one's dealing with it, and you're playing like Soldier or McCree, you can't realistically deal with it either. So you gotta change to somebody that can realistically deal with it. And that's what you got. Them's your options, pretty much. So that's the last question. So thank you very much for watching if you did. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you haven't already, you can join our Discord and ask questions more directly and have a conversation about them, or just shitpost with us. I've started streaming on Twitch Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 8 p.m. EST till midnight EST. There's a link to the channel in the description. And if you managed to make it all the way through the video and somehow still enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe for more content of middling quality in the future. And I hope you found the video helpful.